Okay, so for our fifth and final Android processing tutorial, we're going to go over two topics, interactivity and images. So the code isn't too long, but these are two topics that I think you all will enjoy and find pretty neat to be able to incorporate into your profile. So let's go ahead and get started by opening our Android processing IDE. And so mine opens here back to the same program that we had been working on, which we've done quite a bit as far as the text, the color, drawing shapes. But remember, in case yours didn't populate on its own, if it wasn't saved there, you can always access it by going back up to that menu and opening it up from there. So let's go ahead and go back to our folder in the Google Drive, and I'm doing that just by going back to my browser since I didn't close out that tab or URL. And now we're going to go to the week 3 folder and go ahead and grab the code for tutorial 5. And we'll go ahead and download that and then open it into our text editor. Go ahead and scroll on down to the tutorial 5 code. And to start with, I'm just going to grab this first code. As I mentioned, we're going to go over two different topics, interactivity and images. So first, let's just go ahead and tackle the interactivity, which isn't much. It's really just this small block of code. It's not much code, I should say, but it's very powerful and it's pretty neat. So go back over here to our Android processing IDE and hold down your finger to go ahead and paste it. Now, as I had mentioned a couple of tutorials back, once we started learning about color, that every time we draw something now, we have to explicitly write its color. If not, it'll just automatically use the last color that we used. So as you see now in this, for tutorial 5, I draw a new ellipse and a new rectangle. And again, back to our parameters for the ellipse and the rectangle is our X parameter, Y parameter, our width, and our height. So since we didn't change the color since our text that we wrote in pink, as you recall from the previous tutorial, we expect that ellipse and rectangle to be written pink. Now, so the first variable, it's actually defined, it's by the processing programming language. So when we say if mousePressed, this returns a Boolean value. Boolean meaning either true or false. So if the mouse is pressed, and in this case, since we're on an Android tablet, meaning our touch, so our finger touch. If our finger is touched and pressed down onto the surface, then this would be true. And the block of code inside this if statement is only executed if it's true. So if the mouse is not pressed, we do not have our finger on the screen, this will not even execute. So initially, we would expect that only the ellipse and rectangle would be drawn, and this ellipse, which we see by the width and height parameters that this is, will actually draw a circle, will not initially be drawn. And it won't be until we press our finger onto our Android surface that it will begin to draw an ellipse. Now, if you remember, these first two parameters of the ellipse function is a x coordinate and a y coordinate. Now, again, defined by the processing programming language is mouseX and mouseY, which gives you the x coordinate of the current location of your mouse and the y coordinate of the current location of your mouse. And in this case, again, being our finger touch on the screen. Now we'll go ahead and run this small piece of code so that we can see how that interactivity works. And again, we'll do that by tapping that play button at the top of the screen and install, and then we'll touch open again as usual. And we'll see our program executed, and as I mentioned, initially we just see the ellipse and the rectangle that I drew. And as I touch my finger on the screen and just kind of drag it about, it draws that circle everywhere my finger's touching on the Android screen. And the ellipse and the rectangle, I really just initially drew those in an arbitrary position. It was mostly just to show you all that we are still drawing in the pink that we drew our last text in. And then the difference from a static shape drawing to what we did with the mousePressed using the mouseX and mouseY coordinates. So that was pretty neat. And the next thing, and I want you all to do different things with the mousePressed and the mouseX and Y, have fun with that and make changes to the code. And again, go back to the processing.org if there's something that something more than what I explained on here that maybe you want to try to implement, and that provides all of the reference you need to be able to access these functions and to know what the capability of them are. Now I want to move on to show you all the next part of this tutorial, which is how the images work and how we can bring images into our processing profile. So we will go ahead and go back to our text editor and grab the rest of that tutorial 5 code, which is going to be from images down to that last line right above the last parenthesis as usual. We'll copy that, bring it back over to our Android processing IDE, hold our finger down to paste it. Okay, so in this sample code, I show you all how to use a picture in your processing code, and this picture is a web picture, so it's something that you've gotten off of the internet. So currently for this tutorial, we're only going to deal with web-based photos. Now, I grabbed this picture off of my LinkedIn profile, so you can basically, grab any picture off of the internet that is appropriate, and use it into your processing code. So if you have a photo on Facebook or anywhere that you want to use and put in here, all you do is go online, go to your web browser, go to that photo, and if you're on a PC, you can right-click on it and just copy the image URL. I'm sure you all have done that before, and the image URL is what you'll use here. And so you'll see initially I declared an image object, and so I'm calling that webpic. And you'll also need to declare a string, which will be your URL, which, like in previous tutorials when we wrote text, which are strings, we enclose them in double quotes. So you do have to enclose your URL in double quotes. And you'll set your picture to load the image. So we use the function load image, and the only parameter it takes is the URL. Now, loading the image doesn't actually draw the image on our canvas. So if you only did this part, and ran the code, you actually would not see the picture. You have to use the function image, which actually draws the picture. So when you call the function image, the first parameter is the loaded image, and the second parameter is the x coordinate where you want it to be located, and this is where it will start drawing it. So you'll notice I put the horizontal center, but once we run this code, the image won't actually look like it's in the center because it's the upper left-hand corner which was drawn at the horizontal center, which is where it began to draw it. And then our y coordinate, how far down on the screen we want it to be located. Now, in order to be able to access a URL through our processing code, we do have to set some permissions here within our Android processing IDE. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And I did include some instructions here in the code, commented out in the code for you. So we'll go up to that menu and go to our sketch properties and then the sketch permissions, and it's in alphabetical order, so just scroll on down there to I, and there you see internet. So initially that won't be checked. You'll just need to tap your finger there in the box to check it, and then you can just push the back button and that'll save that, so that way we do have those internet permissions to be able to access that URL. Store it as a string, load the image from the URL to our picture variable, to our picture object, and then we'll go ahead and draw the image in our desired location on our canvas. And as usual, we'll execute our code by pushing that play button at the top menu, install, and then open. And there we are. The same, all of that code we had wrote in previous tutorials, along with the photo, which is new, that image that we got off of the web. So I hope you all enjoyed this tutorial series and had some fun programming with the processing programming language. And I encourage you to go to processing.org and practice with some of those tutorials, examples, and references they have, and make changes to the sample code that I posted for you.